Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ernie De Los Santos, founder and faculty chair at Appeal Academy and creator of Top Gun Audit School. We are live on the January 22nd, 2015 edition of Finally Friday, and we do want to thank you for choosing to spend your time with us here on Finally Friday. Today's Finally Friday broadcast is sponsored by, I got a bunch of sponsors now, the Health Law Partners, providing solid advice and real solutions for healthcare business nationwide, and also by Recovery Analytics, Sharon Easterling's company, committed to your success, and also by MedLinks Cost Containment, makers of the Healthcare Audit Tracker. You really should visit zerodenials.com today, and you can see how they can help you track audits and really reduce or even eliminate denials. They have been able to do that. And then we have another sponsor, Aerolib Healthcare Solutions. Many of you are familiar with Dr. Deepak Pahuja, who's a frequent speaker on our show as well. He has a patient-centered total quality management consulting firm, and they are the makers of the Physician Advisor's Guide DVD, which is now available on demand, as you can see on the screen. And finally, our newest sponsor, the Council for Certification of Medical Auditors, or the CCMA. They are the creators and maintainers of the widely used Certified Medical Audit Specialist, or CMAS certification. They have approaching 500 CMAS specialists nationwide. So that's something that I really recommend you go at least check it out, because it's something where you can, even if you don't want to get certified, you can get you can buy their manuals and things like that to improve your auditing capabilities. Anyway, today we're going to go over some comments that were recently made by the acting director of CMS, Andy Slavitt, I don't know how to pronounce his name, comments about how meaningful use is being replaced in 2016. And of course, this created a tidal wave of confusion, despite his later reversal or clarification of what he said, because it's not really dead. It's not yet replaced. Anyway, we're going to talk about the plans that CMS does, in fact, have in the wings, which are meant to replace meaningful use. We'll talk about what their goals are and why that scares this reporter, at least. And then I have my loyal and faithful co-hosts on hand, Sharon Easterling, who is an auditor, a speaker, and appeal writer at her company. And we have Bill Malm, who is a practicing clinician, a speaker, and a certified medical auditor, and he also serves on the board of CCMA. And Bill doesn't have any meetings today, and he joins us despite the major winter storm that is assaulting his home today. So thanks to you both for joining me. And anyway, I want to make it clear before we go any further that the opinions shared on this show are those of myself and possibly of the panelists, and not representative of their employers. My opinions certainly are my own and no one else's, and you may or may not agree with me. So before we get started, my opinions are not necessarily the opinions of my sponsors, so just so I get to say that. Okay, so before we get started, let me go over a few things, little housekeeping things about how to use the meeting room in case you are new, because we've had a lot of new people joining us on the show recently. Our theme song, I just want to point out to everybody, we do have a theme song. I can't play it on the show because the room won't let that come through, but if you go to appealacademy.com and go to Fun Stuff, you can get the Finally Friday theme song and you can watch it there. Highly recommended, of course. Anyway, of course, on our homepage, you get links that take you to this week on Finally Friday, how to get all the details, etc. And that will take you to the This Week on Finally Friday page. And then, of course, here is where you can get the handouts. You can click on this link or just scroll down, and you get to the box where you can get the handouts. And then later on, I'll post the replay of the show. This is the link where you can go see previous shows, get a list of those, and watch the shows and get handouts. And all that, of course, is for free. And then we've got the links to our sponsors, and here are links on some of how to use the meeting controls and how to register to get our emails, and then all this other fun stuff down here, links to other things on our site. Anyway, if you are struggling with and don't know how to use the room very well, there's a control panel at the top of your page, and any page on the site, if you go there and you look for this thing on the side, you click on that, and it will take you to a page that will give you all the information about this. And some of you, if you were watching the slideshows before the show started, you saw some of these things: how to get the audio, how to open the chat box, and that is, I highly recommend you open that because it's a pretty active chat room. Let's see, and as a matter of fact, somebody's going to send them the handouts. They couldn't get it. They said the link isn't opening. Anybody else have that problem? Apparently not, because other people seem to have them. I don't know what that, maybe I screwed up something. Okay, but other people got it. Okay, well, that's nice. If you don't have the handouts and you want them, put your email in the box and somebody will send them to you, I guess. Or I can send them to you later. But anyway, then you've also got a way to zoom in on the screen on that control panel, so that if I'm not zoomed in far enough, you can zoom in and out. Just be careful, because once you zoom in, well, if you want to see full screen again, you have to zoom back out. It won't do that automatically. There's a list of participants. That's how you can chat with an individual or with all of us in the chat room. And forget these other options. I'm not going to give you control of the room. Okay. So let's see. I think I'm done enough with that. Won't open for me either. Okay. Interesting. All right. Well, I'll have to deal with that. Okay, so I'll get back to that. Let me go get back to the slideshow, and we'll start going forward. And, okay, previously, like last week, here's what we were talking about on the show, that the RACs are back. The QIOs don't seem to know the rules because the rules keep changing. It's not their fault. CMS keeps doing weird things. And, of course, we talked about the new Medicare Advantage RAC, which is not that new, but they seem to be in place, although it doesn't look like CMS really knows what to do with them, just like they don't know what to do with the Medicare Advantage auditors and their audits of risk adjustment and the Medicare Advantage plans in general. They seem to be struggling with how do they handle that. And then we were going to talk about observation versus IP. Are we fighting City Hall? Should we just be doing, more outpatient than we think? CMS certainly wants to go in that direction. I think all the insurers want to do that as well. So why don't we, let's not plug on Superman's cape. There's not a whole lot we can do about that if they want to go that way. But anyway, we're going to talk about that more in the future. We're going to talk a lot more about outpatient in the future. This week we are talking about MACRA, which is the act that was passed last spring, wasn't it spring? And it replaced the SGR. The question is, are we, what did we get? There's the devil versus what we might have. So maybe the SGR wasn't a great idea, but I'm not sure that what we got new is going to be such a great idea either way. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Mr. Slavitt's comments about the end of meaningful use or not, and we're going to talk about something that's included in that, what's going to replace meaningful use, and as part of MACRA is these episodic groups. There's actually a comment period now, and there are timelines available. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about fighting the Medicare Advantage plan audits. I don't know if Dr. Field is on the line today. I saw him posting some audits that he was getting on the RAC Relief Google group, and I wanted to invite him to chat about that a little bit if he's around. I don't see him on the list. Maybe he is. If you are, Dr. Field, let me know in the chat box. Anyway, and then, of course, the question at the bottom of all this, which I think is a very difficult question, is who should be paying for care of non-compliant patients? Is it fair that the providers are the ones who pay for it? Should they be paying for it all, which is what winds up happening because the insurance plans come back and take the money. That's what would happen. That's what seems to be happening, and I don't think that's fair. Anyway, so we'll talk a little bit about that more. In the news this week, here was a new lawsuit being filed recently by 55 hospitals from 19 states. Now, this is not the first time, of course, that CMS has been sued over the 2 midnight rule, but this one seems to go in the same direction, so I don't even know why they did it, but it does seem to go in the same direction of a previously filed lawsuit that some group filed, and they got a federal judge to actually kind of agree with them that maybe this did violate the Administrative Procedure Act, which is the APA. That's been around since the 1940s. And that's what says how the agencies are supposed to promulgate these rules. They're allowed to make up rules in order to enforce what Congress passes as a law. And so that Congress doesn't get in the middle of telling them basically how to do it. But anyway, so there's a way that they're supposed to do that, and CMS didn't really follow it, those procedures, and so that's what they've been able to go to the federal judge, and he said, yeah, I want to hear what your reasoning was, CMS. So apparently that kind of thing, I'm not sure where you would go to comment on that, but it may be in this article, and I just missed it. Anyway, that's there. There's supposed to be something done by the judge by mid-March, so we'll see what happens. If you want to see the link, see what this new lawsuit is about, here it is there's a link here that should take you to that lawsuit if you want to get a look at it. Other thing that is in the news is that coming up is the first meeting of the Physician-Focused Payment Model Technical Advisory Committee, PTAC, which is supposed to advise the Secretary on criteria for all these new APMs, alternate payment models. And they're supposed to submit comments to the Secretary about that and advise her on that. So there is a meeting that you can no longer sign up to attend it live. I think they're full on that, but there is a way for you to get on and listen to it by teleconference, but you do have to register, and that's in this on this site. You can use that link to get to the site and find. You click under the agenda list there, and it will menu item, and it will take you to that where you can register for it. And then there's also a link that goes to who the committee members are who are on this committee, and brief biographies of them. So in case you recognize somebody on there, maybe you can talk to them. I didn't recognize any of the names, but then I rarely do. Anyway, so that is happening, and I thought that might be something that you might want to listen to. On the other hand, maybe you'd rather listen to paint dry. Okay, so this week we were going to talk about MACRA. Now, you may not remember what MACRA is or was. It was the Medicare Access and Chip Reauthorization Act of 2015. And it's supposed to reform Medicare payment models. And how is it going to do that? It's going to do with two things: MIPS, the Merit-Based Incentive Payment System, and the Alternative Payment Models. And if you go there, if you go to this page on CMS, you can find a lot of links to descriptions of it. I downloaded some of that for you, and that is in your handouts today. In particular, I downloaded the thing that has all the questions because CMS is asking for comments from the industry. Of course, they only gave you X amount of time to look at it, and it was like, I don't know, maybe it was 45 days or something to look at it, and they extended it into February, so you've got some time. But this is what it's about, and let's go look, because the next slide I talk about, here is where they asked for the comments. Now, this is where they have the questions that they want you to comment on. Now, 152 questions they've got in this, okay? And you get how many months have they been working on this to put it together and come up with these questions, and they give you a short period of time to comment on them. Now, there is a way, I believe, in this link or on the page on CMS, and I thought I created a slide about that, but I guess I didn't, that gives you a way to actually do your comments electronically. It's kind of a survey method. So you can, and I don't know, maybe you can skip questions. But there's 97 questions about MIPS, 49 questions about the APMs, and then 6 questions about, well, what do we do with the small practices and areas where they're in a shortage area, what CMS considers a shortage area. How do we deal with those folks? In other words, like critical access hospitals, et cetera. So anyway, they extended the comment period to February 15. Maybe you want to go take a look at that and decide whether or not you want to do it. That's the link to this comment. There's another one that was about the extension, but I think that's pretty much the same thing, except that it's saying that it extended it. You know, question just popped in my mind. I don't know that it was exactly the same questions. Anyway, those are both in your handouts today, so if you get those, you can take a look at them and decide for yourself. I also included in there a presentation, a PowerPoint as a PDF that was created by CMS last summer. Now, this was about the physician fee schedule proposed rule, and it was about all the quality reporting programs. So all these things are mentioned in there. You know, this is another one of those CMS saying it does great education to the provider community, so they don't understand why we don't know what's going on. Well, they made one for the proposed rule. There does not appear to be one for the final rule. So, Bill, I don't know if that means a lot. We haven't done anything on the physician's fee schedule. Maybe we want to do that.
Yeah, we may do something in the future. They had quite a lot of changes this year. About MACRA put in some things, and PQRS and where that's at. Clearly, the EHR incentive program, is it, isn't it? What are we doing with it? So I think that would be a good show. We'll get some of our friends from the physician side to help us.
Okay. Okay. Well, you can look forward to that, and we'll put that together and let you know. Then there are inside. Go ahead, Sharon.
Just a comment, you know, in speaking of MACRA and this comment period, I think one of the reasons that it's important that we all pay attention to this, because it's going to affect our future payment. It's going to affect any incentive payments that we're going to get as a provider or as a health system that owns physicians, or as you might collaborate with another healthcare organization. So it's very important for us to take a look at, because it's going to impact our future payments and how we operate.
I totally agree. I think this is something that's important, and as you'll see, there's a timeline of how this is going to happen, and we'll get to that in a minute. Now, in the documents that are in the handouts today, there's also, just in the slides here, you can get to the download link to get this document separately if you want, but that just tells you where it is. But here's one of the timelines that they published, okay? So you can see the physician fee schedule updates. Here's what they've got planned over the next 4 years. And then it kind of stops. So, you know, what's replacing that? Well, apparently all of this is going to be meant to replace all of that. And here's the MIPS payment adjustment that starts happening in 2019. At least that's the plan. Of course, all this is, you know, who knows.
Right, and that's a good point. And to hear Bill, you know, I've listened to Bill's OPPS presentation for, I guess probably, Bill, this might have started about 3 years ago with all the bundling that's been happening for outpatient services. So as you can see here by this timeline, it appears to propose that with that, are we going to see significant changes, more significant changes with the fee schedule? And they've already started doing that with all the bundling. What do you think, Bill?
Absolutely. And 2019 was set out there by MACRA as that pivotal point that the physician payment programs will be changing their appearance. The fee schedule updates go to 0 after 2019. So, you know, you're starting to see enhanced bundling. You're starting to see the train move out of the station. It's moving very fast. It's moving towards quality, incentive pay, risk-based models, ACOs. You know, you're not seeing the traditional fee-for-service is rooted as it used to be, and I think it's going to hit us very quickly, the value base. That's going to be our new life.
Yeah. And again, just like Sharon said, the important thing is, while this looks like this is going to happen a long time out, it's important to be on these, to watch these comment periods, to submit comments, to let CMS is asking for feedback from the community, whether they listen to us or not. I don't know. They at least have to respond to the comments. That's a part of, that's what people were complaining about with the 2 midnight rule, was that CMS was doing things without a comment and review period. So they've got to do this. That's by law. They have to. So it's important to pay attention to this and be involved. Go ahead.
I love this slide, Ernie. I haven't seen it laid out this way. I think it's very impactful to see it this way. I love this slide.
Yeah, that came from, which document was it? Was it the, it's a timeline. I think it's it's on the CMS site.
Okay.
But I did include this. There is a PDF of this in the handouts today, so you've got it as just this timeline.
This is a great side to take to your leadership, where you're trying to institute a CDI program and you're trying to expand that to the ambulatory side, or you're trying to do something to, take these next steps towards population health. Well, guess what? This slide here is telling you why things are changing.
Yeah. It's a good argument for expanding your CDI to, much more than whatever it is now. You can probably use this as good ammunition that says, look, we need to do more of this. It's going to be more and more important. It's not going to be just inpatient. It's going to cover everything. So we're going to get to that in a minute. Sharon wrote an article like 2 years ago. As usual, she's way ahead of us all. And so we'll get to that in a minute. But then there's another set of timelines that I found. This was in the CMS episode groups summary, which is another PDF from the CMS site that's in your handout. And so there's a single page, but I split it up so we can actually read it. These are the statutory timelines that are set up. So by law, this is what CMS has to do. They have to live by this timeline. So here is comment review periods. And there are a couple of comment review periods. So here's one that goes through, this is the one we've been talking about. Let me get my pointer set up here. Here's the one we've been talking about, that's now. Okay, and then there's going to be another one that's going to correspond to, it's going to happen, and it will be next year, okay? And then there will be, that's when they will end it, so 2017, and then they'll do some more updates in 2018, okay? Now this is all, so this is not something that's going to happen all in 2016. Then the next slide shows the bottom half of that page, which talks about categories and codes. Now that's kind of what, at the moment, they're doing some discussion about, well, what should be in the categories. And then they're going to have the commentary about, well, what to do, what are the codes and what they should be. So again, it's another comment period, okay? And so these things are going to happen. It's going to be important to stay up on them and to participate in the commentaries. So we'll try and keep reminding people about that. But it's all available on the CMS site. You can just go to these links that I provided and get the documents for them and find the CMS pages all about it.
And Ernie, I wanted to hop in here for a second because one of the things I'm starting to see now that I'm kind of inside again is the physician revenue cycle, hospital revenue cycle. They're not keeping very good track of all these deadlines and changes. It's more reactionary. just like the hospitals and large physician practices have a 3, 4, 5-year strategic plan with timelines and deadlines, capital budgets associated with it, I think it's very crucial that these timelines, deadlines, and changes be put down, because as you're doing capital budgets, you're going to need things. And this is a very big driver, so people always end up behind, and it's a great time to put that package together of what is the strategy for the hospital? What's the strategy for the physician group? What are the strategy for CMS? When are these things going to intersect? What do I need when they do? So there's more strategic thinking around these things now, as they've all just kind of flying around up there, changing things about and what have you. Now that ICANN's over, well, it's at least implemented. Now I think we're going to see a lot of littler things or smaller things flying around, and I think we're going to start missing things.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we'll keep trying to post reminders about this stuff. But definitely, folks, go to these pages, look at them, and like I said, I believe there's a way for you to do your comments electronically, so you don't have to sit down and write them all out that way. Anyway, you can look at the questions, consider your answers, and then do it electronically. So that's nice. I think that's kind of a cool thing if that, in fact, works the way I think it does. So we'll have to try and see. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of switch gears here because I want to talk about, now we've been talking about MACRA and what all of this episodic groups means, and there's actually, Sharon's going to talk a little bit about more about that in a few minutes. We're going to open a document and look at this episode group summary again here shortly. Or Sharon, do you want to mention that right now? Let me see if I can pull that up.
Yeah, if you can pull up that page 5, it might help a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, because a lot of people don't understand what this episodic grouper is about. Post-episode grouper, episode grouper. So here's a diagram. This is in that document, the one that's the episode group summary. This is, I think it's page 5, isn't that what we said? Yeah, page 5.
Yeah.
Here's a diagram. It's a very good explanation of what this is going to be about. So go ahead, Sharon. Tell them what we know about this so far.
Yeah, so this is another component of MACRA. CMS is charged with making changes and being able to analyze those changes and institute processes to help us with the whole value-based purchase effort. So when I saw this, I really, didn't understand how it was going to come into play, but there's a great summary document that's attached to it. And there are also Excel spreadsheets that kind of go into each diagnosis category and gives you an explanation of what would be associated with that group. So let me explain a group for a second. So let's think about, last week I talked a little bit about Medicare Advantage and how everything's about the member. It's about the patient. And that's continued thinking here. So here we have if you look to the left, it says pre-episode grouper. And there we have all these episodes of care for the member, the patient. So, they're getting their pharmacy, their meds filled, they're having their outpatient visit, which could be an outpatient surgery, maybe it's a ED visit, or it could be a clinic visit. Then they're also going to have an inpatient claim and then other claims. And I'm thinking those other claims could be things like PTOT, speech, some of those other visits that could be happening. But they're going to take all that and consolidate that into what we consider eligible claims. So that means for that member, all those claims are lumped together. And they're going to be lumped together and looked at by provider individually. And that includes physicians, nurse practitioners, PAs, and then it's also going to be looked at as a whole. So that would be any organization or institution you're affiliated with like your TIN or NPI. They're not real sure exactly how they're going to look at that yet. They want our comments on that. And that's how those things are going to be looked at. But at the same time, when I have a physician visit, maybe I'm going to the clinic today and I have a cough. And that's all the physician really knows. So he's going to submit a diagnosis of cough. And then maybe in the meantime, I feel, oh, my gosh, I'm really sick. I got to go to the ED. So there I go to the ED, and it's determined I have pneumonia. And then I'm sent home from the ED. And guess what? Maybe 2 days later, I end up as an inpatient. And then it's saying I have pneumonia, but not only do I have pneumonia, I also have a sepsis. So there we have all these episodes here are aggregated. So it's going to relate my cough with my pneumonia, and it's going to group it. And it's going to say, okay, she had a cough that was 2 days prior to her pneumonia. Was anything done? But not only is it going to do that, it's going to compare me to the other doctor down the street or to the other institution down the street. So it could say, oh, well, she had an ED visit, but 3 days later she was at the hospital. What happened to that intervention? Why wasn't that patient, why did she require inpatient care? So that's what this episode grouper is going to have the ability to do. It is going to measure and profile physicians individually. It's going to profile providers as a group, as a hospital. It will have multiple abilities. And Ernie was talking about that group that's meeting February 1st, I think. That's some of that conversation. I think that group was kind of involved in kind of building this episode grouper. But it's going to be important for us to pay attention to this because is that appropriate? Of course, I know that if I have a cough, I could end up with pneumonia later on. But what about some of those diagnoses that it could have multiple things associated with it, and it could be placed into the incorrect group? So it's very important for us to pay attention to this because it's going to put a marker on it, as an individual and as a provider. But not only, it's going to take that a step further, and there we see it's risk-adjusted, and it's going to be scored. So what ultimately is that number going to mean to us down the road for quality? And that risk adjustment, okay, how are we coding this? How are we submitting this? Are we telling the full story? And that's why documentation is important. So I would suggest you go out there and just take a look at those episode groups. They're all out there in a spreadsheet by multiple diagnoses, multiple scenarios. Very interesting stuff. They're by ICD-9 code right now. I did not see any that were available by ICD-10. So I'm kind of thinking they've been kind of playing with this data for a little bit, Ernie.
Yeah, sounds like it. Well, I imagine so. I mean, it would make sense for them to do that. So let's hope they did. But this is the grouping. Now, this goes far beyond what the MA plans are doing at the moment, I think. But to me, it looks like, what the Medicare Advantage plans. Go ahead.
Yes, a step further, Ernie. Yeah.
Yeah. The Medicare Advantage.
Bill told me the other day that, in fact, there are some commercial plans that do some things that are similar to this.
Bill, you want to talk about that? Did we lose Bill?
Oh, we might have.
Yeah, might have. Well, that weather down there, there's no telling what's going on.
Ernie, I'm kind of struggling to hear you. This grouper is going to, it's mandatory, so we see the whole patient. Right now we see fee-for-service inpatient, fee-for-service outpatient, PT rehab. We don't see the whole thing. So if they're going to move to population management, they're going to need to know what is the risk associated with these patients. And they're going to need to know what is the cost associated with providing care to the patient, not to the individual element or the episode of care, but what does this patient really look like? Now, this is very, very prominent, these groupers or models like it, over in the countries that have universal health care. They look at the whole thing. They look at it every 30 days. They recompile them. So this model is not a new model for international health care. It will be very new to the U.S.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. All right. So once again, the U.S. healthcare, at least part of the system, is lagging behind what the rest of the world does. Probably because we base payment on all this stuff, whereas the rest of the world doesn't seem to do that, right, Bill?
That is correct. They pay for quality, or that's their version of quality.
Okay. Well, let's see. I want to get over to this next slide. I have then is then switching gears just a little bit right now to talk about the Medicare Advantage Plan audits and denials. And this was a post made by Dr. Field on RAC Relief, where he was talking about they had some new denials from their Medicare Advantage plan. And so it looks, it looks like there's a part of this that I'm looking at this, I'm going, come on. Yeah, readmit on day 29, and so you're deeming that preventable. Or this is what riled me: patient non-compliant with all appointments and prescriptions deemed preventable. There's a part of me that wants to say, wait a minute, why am I supposed to be responsible for a patient who is non-compliant? I tell him what to do. We give him the prescriptions. He doesn't do any of that. Why is that my fault? Why should I then be paying for his care? Obviously, the Medicare Advantage plan doesn't want to pay for the care, and they want the provider to give the money back. And there's a part of me that says, well, that's just not fair. Now, there's also an argument, because I was talking with people the other day, and it seems that, well, maybe that is a good idea to hold providers accountable in order to make them deliver something that has an effect. But that still kind of sticks in my craw, and that's just kind of, maybe that's just me. I don't know. What does everybody think about that? Because it gets down to, like I said, the question, who should be responsible for these patients who are non-compliant? But there's some difficult questions that come up then. Bill, you had told me about a case where, like, an 18-year-old boy died because he couldn't get his prescriptions or something.
Couldn't get his insulin, and they were waiting for referral, and they never went to ER. They were waiting for referral, and a lot of this patient care, as I'm sure every physician that listens to our show will say, is becoming more complicated with all these regulations and stops and what have you. I mean, on one hand, it's important that the physician group or provider take an active interest in, following that outside the hospital if they're going to take a covered life for risk. But in other cases, you can take a horse to water, but it won't drink. So, I mean, we have a lot of social issues that come into play with this being responsible. So when I see non-compliant with all appointments, did we realize that this patient is paraplegic, has no transportation, and or is blind and couldn't read the appointment schedule? I mean, we see a lot of social issues that create these non-compliant behaviors. There are people that are just flat out non-compliant. No matter what you do, you give them a prescription, they don't get it filled, they go out and do whatever they're going to do. But the majority of things that are preventable from people who do want to do the right thing, those are social issues, and I don't think that there is an insurance program out there that even begins to address social issues.
Well, and I talked a little bit about that last week, Bill, with a personal experience I have with my mother-in-law that was somewhat non-compliant. She would, when we all got on her, but outside of that, with her CHF and diabetes and renal problems, she was non-compliant. And I think, Ernie has a pharmacy slide in here, but I think ultimately at some point, patients are going to be held accountable for that, whether it's either a higher deductible, it's either being thrown out of a plan. We're going to move to that at some stage, but who knows when that's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, it does. I mean, and to me, that seems kind of appropriate. Look, if you're not gonna follow the plan that you're given with the care that you're receiving, well, maybe you ought to start paying for this yourself, because you're the one that's making the mess. We're willing to treat you as long as you're going to go along with the treatment, but you don't want to go along with the treatment. Well, if it's a social issue, if there's some reason they can't, I mean, that's a different story. But there's a question of, where do you draw the line? What do you do with it? And right now, it seems like the MA plans are just able to take it all back and stick it through the hospital or the provider, the physician. So that just seems wrong to me. But everything's in flux, I guess. Sharon, I had this article that you had written, and I don't know, maybe this is not the right order to have it in, because you had written an article 2 years ago about how we can't just be doing documentation anymore with only one payment model in mind. And now it seems like that's really coming to roost.
Yeah, absolutely. That episode group will be looking at whatever we submit from wherever. Now, the philosophy is if I include a symptom, and it's going to take it to the right group. But, we just really need to be paying attention to how we're submitting codes, within the practice, within the clinic, within the ED, to ensure that we are being grouped appropriately.
Yeah, and it's going to, so what you're writing is going to have an effect even far beyond just the claim or just the episode that you're working on, the encounter with the patient that you're working on. It's going to have an effect all across. So you can't just be concerned about, this, and, is it appropriate for me to do this now? Or like there were some comments on rack relief the other day about, well, should I go ahead and bill this as observation? Should I create a separate encounter for it or something? And you just can't be concerned. The physicians certainly can't be concerned about that kind of thing. But they do have to be concerned about what they're documenting, of course.
Right.
But thinking about how it's going to be paid, no, it's beyond anybody to figure that out, I think. So, and how this all ties in with, meaningful use is because, as I was saying, I think what the Medicare Advantage plans are doing now is the direction that CMS wants to go, and they do want to replace that with this new MACRA program and the episodic grouper. And this was a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. The acting administrator, CMS, Andy Slavitt, was speaking to a bunch of investors at a healthcare conference, and he made the comment that meaningful use was basically over, and it's going to be replaced with something better in 2016. Well, of course, regardless of what else he said, and here was an article, this is a link to an article that quoted him and talked all about it. The strange thing to me is that he talked about this in that way, when it's not really ready. And then really an even stranger thing for me is that CMS, what I put in red here, the emphasis is mine, CMS is calling on the private sector to create apps and analytic tools that will keep data secure while fostering true and widespread interoperability. He was also making a claim that, if people are going to fight interoperability, they're going to find out that CMS is not their friend. Well, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it's I can see that interoperability has been a problem with EMRs up to this point. And so they're trying to overcome that. I don't know if this is the way to do it. And so, obviously they're taking heart that okay, the physicians certainly don't like this. Basically, the EMRs seem to be more work than less. And so perhaps they're listening to it, but of course it just makes me think, well, maybe it's that he's seen my favorite poster, that, you know, the solutions you guys create are worse than the problems you create, and that, although that still seems to be true. And then he tweeted about it the next day, actually saying the same thing, and it wasn't until a few days later that he starts to talk about this not being the case. So this was another article that was published about it, and there's his tweet that went in, and he keeps talking about, well, there's an important date coming up, March 25. And so no wonder everybody thinks that, or people were thinking, well, meaningful use is over. But then by, what date was this? The 20th, he was backpedaling. So this is why I say he reminds me of some politicians we all know. So maybe he's qualified to run for office. You know, he can backpedal, he can flip-flop, he can prevaricate, he can, you know, say things that don't answer the question. So anyway, then they were saying here they're expected to offer more details at the HIMSS conference in February, March. Meaningful use will be phased out, but it's still apparently something that's alive and well. And then they also pointed out that MACRA, the way it's designed, is only going to address physicians and clinical payment adjustments, not hospitals. That made me think, well, what do you got in mind for hospitals? I thought this was supposed to be something that would group things together, and it seems to me like that grouper has to touch hospital care. So what does that mean?
It can profile them, but it's not, the incentive payment is not meant for the hospital structure. It's meant for the physician structure. But there is, I mean, they'll have the data to be able to do with it what they choose.
It seems like they're going to have to include that data. But maybe not. Maybe that's not going to affect the hospital payment system for a while.
Right, they'll include it.
Well, I think,
Bill, go ahead.
They're in different planes at this point. We had DocFix, and that took it one way. We have OPPS, and we've got a 2 midnight rule. There is nothing about this that's on the same playing field. And I think that Andy Slavitt is recognizing the elephant in the room. This really became cumbersome with the mandate to go electronic. And now we have just thousands of data elements in the system that are completely meaningless. We allow physicians to make smart templates that can't be recognized even within the own system. So if you say you buy Epic and you go from hospital A and physician group A to physician group B, it's different. And you know, you need that interoperability. It's standing in the way of people combining forces by mergers, acquisitions. I mean, you're looking at a re-implementation. I think CMS is seeing that the end of of their being able to just promulgate laws and then have audits that constantly say the hospitals are bad. They're starting to see this. Now, the RACs will be upset to hear this, but I think they're starting to see that, you know, it is now very beyond fragmented. How are we going to get to quality care? And actually, I'm going to read between the lines. I'm hearing him speak about interoperability from IT constantly, but he's speaking tongue-in-cheek on national health care. Yeah. Interoperability on a singular platform, as he keeps proposing, is a singular payment platform. So we have to look at what they're actually saying here.
I don't know how they're going to achieve interoperability. Now, frankly, as having been a developer, and I worked in research and development groups developing digital platforms and business models and things, and I can tell you that from a technical standpoint, interoperability is not a technical problem. It is a business problem. The reason those systems are not interoperable is solely because the people involved don't want them to be interoperable. They don't want to give up their model, their format. They don't want you to be able to use their data out of their system in some other system. They don't want that. It's a business decision. It is not a technical problem. It is very simple to make technical interoperability happen.
And I want customization. You know, some of it's about customization, and I want this to be for me, with the what I want to see in it, and that doesn't necessarily communicate with someone else's system.
Well, and the problem is there's not a standard. There's not a standard set of data that you can say, and this is, because even hospital to hospital, don't even think about country to country. The way you describe a diagnosis or a symptom is with different words. So how do you make that happen? That, again, is a business decision. It's not a technical decision. It creates a technical problem, but these are decisions that have nothing to do with the technology. We don't have computers that can read something on one side and judge that means something else on the other side. No, you can't do that. We don't have computers like that yet. AI's not that good.
Well, I do know ONC and AHIMA and some of those folks are working towards that, but when you get the cart before the horse, it's just hard to go backwards. That's what we've done.
Yeah. Now, there was one example of that Sharon shared with me from a system she's done some work with, and I brought up that article and I put it in here. This is how this system is taking a more active role in their population health management strategy. And so this is the way of the future, is that they're partnering with CVS Health to be able to track what the patient is doing once they leave the clinic, once they leave the hospital. So they're going to be able to share data, and so that way they're going to be able to then send reminders. I don't know exactly what they're going to do, but you can see that it opens up the ability for the physicians and the hospitals to be able to track the patient and say, hey, you're being non-compliant. Is there some problem here? Did you just miss it? Are you not trying it? And then there's the issue Bill mentioned the other day. What about when patients shop doctors? So they just quit using this doctor, so they're not compliant with your program at all. They went to somebody else. Well, now are you going to be penalized for that?
Well, and it's about care coordination, trying to work with that patient or that member to make sure they're getting their meds filled. And if they're not, trying to figure out a solution to help them. Maybe they can't afford their meds. Maybe they can't get to the pharmacy. So it's going to be a way to help that patient throughout their care for population health management. That's the ultimate goal. But the patient has to agree to do it. Now, the problem I see there is my 85-year-old mother not really understanding what she's agreeing to, and then, where she runs into a problem getting her medicine refilled or something. How is that going to impact her in the future? Is she going to appear non-compliant, and is that going to have some type of negative impact on her? So I think this is a great thing, but at the same time, I think, our patients really have to understand they'll be sharing a lot about what's going on with them. And then I can think of some millennials out there that might say, well, I don't want, Novant to be knowing what I'm doing with when I'm getting my meds filled and following up on me personally. So it's just very interesting how this will go. But I think it's a great job, forward initiative.
Yeah, and there's a good question. What if patients don't agree to allow you to see what they're doing? Well, then how can you track it? And how can you be held accountable for that kind of care? There's so many problems with this. I just don't.
Well, they would have to sign a typical like under HIPAA. They will give you the right to see some things, not other things. You can't disclose it. If you want to pay for your treatment that day, then you can ask them to pay. You can pay cash and not have it get disclosed to your insurance company. There's all sorts of regulatory boundaries for this. But I think this is an interesting thought that we are seeing healthcare for acute and urgent care. It's moving out into the physician spaces at convenience locations, be it Boots pharmacies or CVS or Walmart. And I think you're going to see more integrated delivery systems partnering with those pharmacies and minute clinics and the like. I think it's just a natural extension of their ability to grab market share.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, what I like about this is that basically that is interoperability, that Novant and CVS can link their electronic medical record systems. That is interoperability. So I don't know what Sharon, do you know what Novant uses? What system they use?
Epic.
Yeah, they're on Dimensions Epic, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I wonder what CVS is using and how they're making all this work, because Epic is not known for being interoperable. They're not very cooperative with other vendors. Maybe CVS uses a version of Epic. Have they got a retail version? I don't know.
Well, I mean, I don't know what CVS uses, but it's not that hard to port reports back and forth and put them into different venues. I mean, the key here is that a integrated delivery system is now reaching out to that next level of care into the population. You know, hospitals have always been known of call for a doctor's appointment, you've got nausea, vomiting, and you either get a choice of going to the ER or see your doctor in 5 weeks because they're booked solid. So this gives now another opportunity to seek quality care at a fair price or fairer without using emergency services, which is the highest cost delivery system. So this is kind of where they've been wanting to go.
Yeah. Well, I like the idea, and it does. I mean, it points in the direction of this was the promise. Certainly, I think this is what the Obama administration was wanting to see when they started all this. Is they want to see this interoperability happen, so you can go from one clinic to another, to a hospital, to the pharmacy, and your records would be available. Based upon your permission, but that they would be available. You wouldn't have to trudge paper or be without it all. So anyway, that's I actually like that kind of a thing, to see that happening. But I read this blog post, and it really gave me pause. It made me think of Deep Throat from the Watergate years. Certainly dating myself, because a lot of you on the phone probably weren't born during Watergate. Deep Throat was a person leaking information to the newspaper, and they kept telling the reporter, follow the money. Well, what if we follow the money about this? Why is meaningful use going away? I mean, we just spent millions of dollars, right? Billions of dollars putting in EMRs and working on meaningful use. Now, all of a sudden, they're saying, oh, well, we did that. Now we're going to do something else. Well, guess who's going to pay for it? Remember, the government didn't pay for EMRs. They had incentive programs, which they had to do, but it still doesn't pay for everything. And so now, after sinking, as she says here in this article, after collectively sinking billions of dollars in EHR technology over the last 5 years, hospitals and doctors are now going to be expected to foot the bill for yet new software and computer products. And, of course, she's kind of bashing Silicon Valley.
EHR goes beyond meaningful use. I mean, meaningful use is just, some measures. It's only a small component of it. I think the EHR initiative went way further than that, but I do see what his point is. But, it had to do with eligibility. It had to do with not knowing if the patient had an allergy or not. It had to do with, making sure that a patient got the right med. EHR went way further than that. So it had some great purposes to it, but I think there are different problems with it.
Yeah. Well, and I don't agree with the writer in the article. She seems to think that J.P. Morgan and the like have a conspiracy going, sort of, to, make the doctors keep spending money. But it is true that when Epic makes money, nobody on Wall Street or in Silicon Valley gets a piece of the action because it's privately held. So they've got a lot of cause to go out and create something new. And of course, there's nothing new to create if Epic takes that all. But anyway, so that was a blog post. I found it very interesting. I thought it was a great read, and just makes you think a little bit. Now, if we get down to this is we're out of time. My personal opinion on what's happening is that the MA plans are getting very little real guidance from CMS because they don't know how to rein in the MA plans. They don't know how to keep them from elevating the risk adjustments. They don't know how to advise them about these, about the audits that they're doing. So the MA plans are doing whatever is legally allowed because they can. It allows them to take money back from the providers, and that just pours profit back into their plans. Now, of course, they're going to probably get some of that taken back by CMS, but I find it hard to believe that all that's just going to go back straight into the trust fund. It's also obvious to me that what CMS is trying to do is to automate the process of using the claims data without the medical records to evaluate the payment of claims for both hospitals and physicians. Now, as we noted, right now that's only going to happen with physicians, but they'll do something with the hospitals. They're certainly going to track it, and they're going to use data to do all that. Now, of course, ICD-10 is going to make that easier, or I don't know if that's better or worse. I think it's worse, probably. And then my question is, who should be responsible for the care of these non-compliant patients? If you're doing care that isn't returning a result, that I can understand. I mean, I'm for that. If you're doing work that is not producing, a return, well, then there's at least question as to whether or not, what should you be paid for that. Now, I also realize that there are things that doctors can't do anything about. You're going to treat it as much as you can and with everything you know how to do, and it's still not going to work. That happens. Does that mean you should have to pay for that? The care should be free for the insurer or for the patient, and the physicians in the hospital are stuck with it just because it's beyond technology, it's beyond our abilities? I don't think so. But that's my opinion about what's going on. And so you may or may not agree with me, and I do think the MA plans, the insurers, are basically robbing the providers because it's allowable. That's where the money is. So that's all we've got time for this week. Coming up in the next few weeks, we're going to talk about some tools. We're going to show you a particular set of tools that will at least show you what you got to do in order to predict denials. And of course, if you want, you can get that tool. But if you want, there is a way to predict denials. It can be done statistically. You can use that in your system, and that is going to affect your ROI. So we are also still working on the show with the American College of Physician Advisors and with Elizabeth Lampkin about how do you show ROI, a return on investment, for your PAs, for a rounding program, et cetera, all the stuff we talk about. And then we did, I've already been talking with Dr. John Zellum of EHR. He wants to come and talk to our audience. I think he's got great stuff to say. We always have great attendance when he's on, so that's coming up soon as well. And I do want to remind everybody that we are going to post more things in the future on the aerolib.com aorta forum. So I'm going to be posting like a lot of the handouts and things. Some of you are telling me you're having trouble getting them here. It may be easier for me to post them on aorta, so I'll start doing that. That'll be an easier way for you to get there, and it'll be on aorta. What I do here is a zip file. Maybe that's causing you problems, so I'll post it on that. It's not easy for me to post all of them here without a zip file, but aorta will make that easier, so I will do that in the future. So anyway, that's it for our show today, and we'll be back live next Friday, January 29th, so watch for my announcements. Thanks, everyone, for participating today. Special thanks to my co-hosts, Sharon Easterling and Bill Malm, for their help as always. And, of course, thanks to our sponsors. Please go visit their sites at least. They are the ones who make these shows possible. If you like the shows, go hit their sites, see what they've got to offer, because they're the ones who are paying for these shows to happen. So watch our emails about next week's show, January 29th. Share the links to our show with your colleagues and friends. And the last thing I want to share with you is just the thought that, we all want a land, an industry where eyes are wide open and we have the veritable Elysian fields. There's some interesting things on this slide if you want to take a look at it. But we're fighting in a land, unfortunately, where the stakeholders don't seem to listen to us very much. So we got to do these comments. We got to be out there and make sure that we get heard, because they're not very often going to come ask us, but right now they're asking for comments, so we need to do that. Okay? So thanks very much, everyone. We'll see you next time when it's finally Friday. Everyone have a great weekend. Bye-bye.